Hello and welcome to another session of Sqoop. So in all our previous examples till now, we have imported the data in a normal text file, right? So we did a HDFS cat and we were able to see the data in your text file. But we have also learned that there are other file formats, the serialized file formats like the sequence file, the Avro file, the Parquet file, the ORC file. We can also import the data in that file format as well. It's quite simple. There's not much of a difference actually. So if you look at this particular command, now whatever that I have highlighted, this is a normal command, this is a normal thing that we do. So if you import like this, if you execute this command, it is going to import the data in a text format. Now if you want to execute this in a sequence way, then you just have to add this particular sentence as sequence file. So you are telling Sqoop to import this data with whatever the username and password that you have and the mappers, number of mappers, but import this data as a sequence file. Similarly, if you want to use this as an Avro, you just use as Avro data file. If you want to do it in a Parquet, you just put as Parquet file. So that it is that simple. Now for ORC, unfortunately, we don't have something like ORC as a ORC, but there is another way we can do it, which we will see in just a minute. But let's go ahead and execute this command. So I'm going to copy this command and I'm going to execute this. Let me clear this up. So I press enter. So basically this is going to execute the command and import this data in a sequence file. So the data is now executed. So I'll go quickly and check this data. So I do an ls to list of the files. So I should have only one file. So if I do a cat, so you will see this data would be in unreadable format. So this is the data that is there, which is quite unreadable. So this is the sequence file. Now similarly, you can also import it as Avro file. So again the same command, except that instead of as sequence file, you use as Avro data file. Rest of it is all same. You have the import, you have the connect, you have the username, you have the password file, table names, everything is same, except that the final words is as Avro data. You are importing it as an Avro data. All right, so we have this data here. We have imported it as Avro file. So let me quickly check. So you can see the extension .avro. So this is an Avro file that we have imported into. So again, unreadable format. So this is your Avro file. It's quite unreadable. Okay, so let me do the same thing with Parquet file. So again, the only change is this particular line or this particular code where we have mentioned as Avro Parquet instead of this, instead of the normal file. Okay, so this is going to get executed and we should have this data in the Parquet file format. All right, it is executed and I'll check this directory where it is stored. So you have this data here. So this is your Parquet. So if I do a cat, again this is in unreadable format. Okay, so anyways, so instead of cat, let's say we will use text. We have seen this as well, right? Especially when it is a compressed file, to see if this is going to show us a little bit more better data. But no, here you can see some data, but again this is again in unreadable format, right? Similar. So text basically works for zip data. So this is more of a compression and other things, right? So this is how we are able to import this data. So we have imported the data in the sequence file. We have imported the data in Avro file. We have imported the data in Parquet file. Now, why do we import this again in this serialized format? Is basically, as we mentioned, serialized data are easy to transfer. So when you using your Hive or you're using a Spark, you would basically want the data in one of the serialized formats, whether it's a Avro or ORC or your Parquet. Again, we have seen the differences between each of them and the use case for them. So it is important that you have the data in the serialized format. Now you could basically import this data in test format and to do some kind of processing to change that into a serialized format, but Sqoop itself will provide it. While you import it, you can import it in the serialized format. Okay, but now what about ORC? Now, ORC, there is no equivalent as Avro data file or as Parquet file or as sequence file. In order to import this file as an ORC, we need to leverage the Sqoop's HC catalog feature. So H catalog, so it's not HC catalog, it's H catalog. H catalog is a table storage management tool for Hadoop that expresses the data of the Hive metastore to Hadoop application. So basically what we are saying is you will have to create a Hive table for the ORC file to be stored. It cannot be just imported, but you have to create a Hive table for that. Now we will learn about Hive in the coming section. We have a separate section where we'll deal with Hive, but basically at a very high level, Hive is basically a tool or a query tool used to query the data. So you have the data in your Hadoop system, and how we are reading this data is HDFS cat, right? So if you want to read the data in a tabular format, you can create a table, not just like a SQL table. That table will refer to this particular file, and when you query this table, you can basically say select star, and this query will go and hit this file system and it will retrieve this data. Okay, so if you are confused with this, that is okay. You can still there is a separate section on Hive. We will discuss in more detail how everything comes up, but for ORC, for the purpose of understanding ORC, what we have to do is we have to do two steps. One, we have to create a Hive table with the desired HDFS warehouse location, and then we have to import this data from RDMS to that table. So when you import this table to that table, behind the scene it is getting stored in the HDFS location that is mentioned, right? So that way you will have this data ORC file in that location, right? So let's just jump ahead and create this. So this is how we import it as a ORC. So we have the Sqoop import where we are connecting to the database, MySQL database. We have the table names, then M1, then H catalog database test. So this is a test database that we are creating. Then the table name that we are mentioning, and then we are saying that stored as ORC file. So this is important. When you say stored as ORC file, the table will be created and then the data will be stored in ORC. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute this command. So let me change it to orders, right? So this is the command that we have. So I just removed the line, so make sure that when you execute it there are no lines. Otherwise you have to specifically mention that this is a new line, right? Anyways, let me go ahead and execute this. So this is going to run. As you can see here, right, it is creating a table, create table test.order. So the database is test and then it is creating the table orders. So while this is running, I am going to open another session. Okay, now I want to open Hive here, so I'll just type Hive and I enter. It will open the Hive session for me. Meanwhile, we see this, the data is retrieved. You can see the number of records it has retrieved, and if you scroll up and you will see the details related to this log. And what we are really interested here is this one, the create table. So it has created this tables. It looks like a normal SQL statement, right? You create the table, you give the details, and here it mentions like, you know what, this table data you store it in an ORC file format. Okay, we want this test dot order. So let's go back. So we are at Hive here. So if I do a show databases, it will list the databases that are associated. So we created this table in test, so I'm going to use this. So if I do a show tables, I just have one table, right? So now I can query this like this, your normal SQL statement. So it will give me the details, right? This is the same data, right? Orders that we have imported. Now this, if I do this, if I execute this query, it will give me the details of where this file system is, where it is stored. So if you see here, this is stored, this is the location, and this table data is basically stored here, user hive warehouse. So this is basically user hive warehouse is the default location of the hive. So I'm going to query this. So I come back here. So if I query here, so you will find this. So this is the file. So this is the ORC file that got imported. So if I do a cat, I should see this is basically the data that is coming up. So this is how we can import this data into the ORC file format. So we need to create a Hive table. The Hive table will have the file system stored in the default location, and you can access this location. That is where your ORC file will be stored. So this way we can import this data. We have seen how we can import in sequence file, we can import in Avro data file, we can import in Parquet, and we can also import in ORC file. ORC file we have to do a little bit of work, but all the others are quite simple. You just add like a one word code to the normal Sqoop command and you should have this done, right? So that's it for this session. I hope this was clear to you, and I'll see you guys in my next class.